Welcome to the Painful Lessons podcast with your hosts Tyler Ramsey and Ben Goldhirsch.
This is my friend Julie Chang, and she is amazing. I would have you on this podcast for a variety of reasons, but I feel like you're someone that doesn't need to pad your resume at all. Like, you have such an incredible life experience that includes, first and foremost, which I'm really curious about, is you are a brain cancer survivor. Like, you had very intense brain cancer and then had a whole thing, and you came through that with this like new verve for life, and I want to discuss that.
Yeah.
And then also you were like at the top of your field as a entertainment and lifestyle reporter, and now you have your own brand. That I think that you're doing awesome, and I love your content. Before I forget, tell me exactly the best way to find you for that.
Oh yeah. So God, you guys, I don't know what I was doing. Forever, everyone told me YouTube is the major leagues and that Instagram and TikTok and everything else is the minor leagues. Or are the minor leagues. I'm getting my plurals and singulars confused. Anyway, I just kind of, I'm like two little kids. I can't be bothered. I'll just keep doing the gram because it's working for me. And then I just realized, as a TV journalist,
Yeah.
my skill set and my training is all about sort of longer form storytelling, right? Like, I don't want to have to be forced to tell my story in 30 seconds or less. And so I really relaunched my YouTube channel this year. There's already 3 episodes up. And so that's how I can be supported. If you guys go to youtube.com/@trulyjuliechang, you're just basically going to get a little slice of life, one video at a time. And the first one I did was just like so crazy because Leif and I just celebrated our 10th anniversary. So to mark it, we went to a resort called Nihi in a tiny island called Sumba in Indonesia. And they've been voted the world's best resort for the 2 years in a row. So I give you like a whole like insider tour.
Cool.
Listen, we would never go so baller unless
watched it.
Yeah, it was like a big anniversary. So we did that. And like Tory Burch's twin sons live there. And that whole vibe was a little bit crazy. But there's this one surf break called God's Left. It's a private surf break and one of the longest lefts in the world. It was like mind-blowing. But I go into all that. And then the second episode, I just wrapped a movie called Shell. So I go through the really exciting part of picking out my outfit for the Shell wrap party. Listen, I'm opposite Kate Hudson and Elizabeth Moss in this movie. And if you're going to a party where they're going to be there, like, you want to try, but you don't want to be trying too hard. So I needed my audience to just like really chime in to make sure that my outfit looked like I'm cool, but not desperate. And then the third episode I just put up, really fun stuff, is just the origin story of me and Leif. Like, just the wackadoo, embarrassing, awkward way that I slipped into his DMs after 10 years of not talking to him. But I've been crushing on him since like day one. We've been friends since, gosh, we were 13, which is so weird because we're only 23 now. Yeah, so that cringe story is definitely entertaining. And yeah, so it's just going to be like just a multi-gamut of stuff. And Leif is like really passionate right now about making his own kefir water. I mean, can you tell that we live in Venice and we're totally like hippy-dippy people now? So we will definitely be doing an episode on kefir water because he swears that kombucha is gone and kefir water is in.
What is kefir water? I never heard of it.
Kefir water is basically the same benefits as kombucha, but without the tea and without the sugar.
All right.
Yeah, because
Cool.
I always find myself having to dilute my kombucha with like LaCroix or something because it's still too sweet. But kefir water is basically that. But it's like that same healthy bacteria. You have to feed it. I call it his other girl. He really has to tend to this girl. Because she has to be burped like once a day. Because if you forget to burp her, it's like champagne, like ceiling splash.
Wow.
It will explode.
Wait, and didn't when you
Yeah.
were going through the deepest part of your brain cancer?
Yeah.
Isn't that when Leif? Would you create a context? Isn't that when he proposed?
Oh my God. It's so Nicholas Sparks. Are you guys ready? I
Yeah,
put on
ready.
fake lashes for you, so I'm going to try not to cry. And honestly, I've told this story like so many times. I bet like my audience is like, oh my God, here we go again. Sorry. It should
Well,
be a
we are
drink.
so passionate about about lessons that you can learn
Yeah.
from these type of intense experiences.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I think, like, I had a dear friend going through brain cancer at the same time that I was, and her husband reacted completely the opposite. I think when something as traumatic as brain cancer happens, the person going through it and those in the orbit, there's room for however you're going to react, right? Because it's just like, it's kind of serious. So I don't fault her husband for just kind of like, whoa, this is too scary for me and backing out of the marriage. But at the same time, if you are able to find someone who leans into that fear with you, God, like, it's almost like Leif and my story started backwards, right? It's like, you know, you think about like if you're 80 something and you're really gravely sick, who is there by your hospital bedside? Like, I don't have to imagine that because that's where we started, right? So we've been dating, gosh, a year and a half, and a year of that was long distance because I was here in LA and Leif was back in New York finishing business school. And when I got my diagnosis, you know, they give you the full gamut of the possible outcome. So they told me where the tumor sat. So it's a fist-sized meningioma, and it's sitting on top of my sensors. So 1 week, I would only taste metal in my mouth. Second week, I wouldn't be able to read the prompter when I'm live on air. Third week, I'd only be able to hear out of my, right ear. And so all these scattered symptoms, I thought I was losing my mind. I thought it wasn't like any real sickness. I thought it was a mental illness. And I thought I was like, I don't know, early stage of schizophrenia. I don't know. And so I went to see a neurologist, and she like shined a flashlight in my eye, and she was like, oh, this always happens when people relocate from New York. It's different barometric. Yeah, she's like different barometric pressures, different allergies, stress of a new job. Take these migraine pills and we'll go from there. Like typical Western medicine, just go to the drugs right away.
Right.
And I went surfing, and I'm so novice to the sport that I go when it's completely glass. There's no wave at all, and it's at sunset. But I was like, you know what? It was one of these like coming to Jesus moments, because it was like sorbet ice cream melting. It was so pretty. It was like purple, lavender, like orange. And so I was like, well, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just jump off my board and admire this beautiful California sunset. And you know how hard it is to undo the ankle strap Velcro? Especially if there's no wave, right? Like there's no reason that should become undone. Unbeknownst to me, it comes undone. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I look for my board, like as I'm sitting, like, I don't know, chest deep in water. It pops out, and I get a giant black eye. I went to get a CT scan on the eye, and that's how they saw the tumor.
No way. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so to me, I'm not religious, but I'm like, holy cow, if that's not a divine intervention, I don't know what is. So clearly my work here on earth is not done. Someone really wanted me to go get that checked out. And so as soon as I got the diagnosis, I called Leif in New York. And actually, he was traveling. He was in Brazil. And I said, no, that's not true. He was in Japan. And he was in a layover. And I told him the diagnosis. And I was like, they're telling me either I will lose some of my communication skills, be, severely brain damaged. Like these are all the outcomes. And I probably will never be able to have children. I probably will lose some of my sensories, right? Because it's sitting right on my sensories. That's why it's that's why the symptoms were all over the place.
Right.
I said, this is a lot for someone to sign up for at 31 after like a year of dating. Why don't we just like pump the brakes? We can always resume if at later time if we want to, but I just think this is like a journey that is not fair for you to sign up for. And he's like, kind of like in Japan, choppy reception, and like he's just like, yeah, and then he like goes right into like let's just, he's so like even keeled and clear thinker. Like when everything is chaotic, he goes to super clear space. It's such a gift because I'm that person. I'm like chaotic, and then he's just like even keel. I'm super emotional. He's even keel. So he immediately deep dives into like what kind of care can she get on her insurance. Turns out my insurance would cover like 20% of a $500,000 brain surgery. So I would have been completely bankrupt. And so he at the time was working at Goldman Sachs, and he did research on his insurance and realized that I would be fully covered, but we'd have to be married.
Oh, wow.
And so he flew to LA right away, and he said, I remember these words like clear as a bell, as if it was like an hour ago. He goes, throw a white dress in the car. Throw a white dress in the trunk. I'm like, what? And we drove to Valley of Fire, which is just an hour and a half outside of Vegas. On the way there, I hired a freelance pastor who works at one of those like Whitechapel, Vegas places. And she came straight from a Renaissance festival in her velvet gown and married us in the middle of these beautiful red rocks. We got married in front of a red rock formation called Seven Sisters. And we were like chasing the clock because the sun was setting. And I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be pitch black. But at the most almost the same colors as the day that I got hit with my board in my face. Those same colors was the sky when we eloped. And 2.5 weeks after we eloped, I got my brain surgery. And Goldman Sachs, I mean, I know they're like, have a reputation for being greedy and whatnot, but they paid for my full surgery.
That's an unbelievable. I didn't know this whole story.
Mind you, I heard the year after they changed their whole like partner policy. I'm convinced it's because of me. I'm convinced after my brain surgery, they were like, this is way too generous of an offer. So my apologies to everyone who has suffered a lesser insurance coverage at Goldman Sachs because of me.
What a killer story. I didn't know the whole thing. That's amazing.
Yeah. No,
Is that the surfboard?
What?
Is that the surfboard?
No. But I still do have the foamy surfboard. Again, like, it's a foamy board. It should never go missing. It's so buoyant.
Yeah, you're right. And the rash guards that are leashes. They don't just like pop
No,
out.
especially if there's like no current. You know what I mean?
I love that someone just gave you like just take some migraine medicine. It's probably because you moved jobs.
Oh, she won't even take my calls. Like, I'm not gonna sue her. I just want her to know.
Oh my God.
That
she sucks.
You should always prescribe a scan. Like, take the mystery out. That's why scans exist.
You should just know you suck. You should just know you suck as a doctor. Why would she ever want to take that call? Huh?
Yeah.
Do you feel like, in addition to being quite aware that you found the love of your life, did you have any other radical life adjustments? Like, were you going too fast? Were you? It sounds like you were already. If you're surfing, you're already kind of enjoying life. I mean, did you have any other radical?
Oh
life
my
adjustments?
God, I am the worst. I was not taking care of myself, Tyler. I grew up in a Korean household where like the motto from my dad was you work when others sleep, and that's how you get ahead. So I I took that almost too literal. For 17 years, I woke up between the hours of 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. You know, like
You would wake up?
oh yeah,
Between 1
no,
and 5?
my call time. You know, morning shows go on at 5 a.m., 4 a.m.
Oh, of course, of course.
So, and then you have to go in for hair and makeup. The producers have to prep you on the big breaking stories of the day. So, yeah. So I would go in, God, when I was like a little budding reporter in New York City, I would have to be at like the really bad crime scenes 2 a.m.
So did you start covering crime and then
yeah. I mean, everyone
start covering entertainment?
everyone gets their feet wet covering they call it like general hard news. Yeah. And then
When did the surgery happen? Like how long
surgery
ago was your
happened
brain
10
surgery?
years ago.
And how, like, if that surgery and having brain cancer and surviving was like a wake up of like, hey, I want to move a certain way going forward relative to how I have been moving, did that persist, or did you sort of revert back to how you were, like, after a certain amount of time, you're like, all right, you know what, I'm healthy again,
Yeah.
back to dad's motto of work while everyone else is sleeping? Or were you like,
Okay.
no, I learned a lesson and I'm going to take it going forward?
I mean, I learned a lesson, but it took 5 years.
What do
Like,
you mean?
I went back to my work, the same
Yeah.
schedule, same way of just white knuckling it for 5 more years after I had a fist-sized brain tumor removed. Right? Like, it's kind of insanity. There's a saying that I love: if you don't make time for your wellness, you're going to be forced to make time for your illness. And I'm a classic case of that. And I preach it only because I need to hear it most. Like, I was such a Stockholm Syndrome victim that I was like, oh, clearly my body is telling me to slow down, but I'm going to just keep white knuckling it because it's a long story for another day, but I'm like a child of abandonment. And so I never could really rely on grown-ups in my life. So I knew, like, psychologically, I was like, oh no, I have to make this work on my own. Even though I had such a supportive partner who had demonstrated royally that he was going to stand by my side no matter what. But the abandonment trauma in me is so deep that I was like, no, I have to keep doing this. I have to keep doing this schedule that's killing me. And I'm going to tell you a stat where you're just going to be like mind blown. Based on the growth rate of my brain tumor, which was this big, they can estimate how long it's been in your head. When they found it, they told me it had been in my head for 12 years. Guess how long I've been doing a morning show at that time? 12
You're kidding
years.
me.
12 years. So between the no sleeping, having all this radio frequency on me at all times, sitting in microwave satellite vans for 8 hours a day, I mean, and then just the overall toxic culture, right? Stress of the job, like all of it was culminating, and I still went for 5 years more. Anyway, Ben,
So
you
what
raised your
happened-
hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, what happened in 5 years after? Like, what was the, like, wait a second.
5 years. I had 2 children. So, I mean, like, I think going back to the job, I kind of felt like that was the only way to start a family and still have, like, stable income and buy a home and all that stuff. And so, you know, it wasn't completely like I was, like, just, like, you know, not thinking about what I was doing. I felt like these were the best options I had. But after 5 years, and you know, like, when you become a parent, for those out there who are caregivers, you now answer to a different set of rules and boundaries, and your children really become your greatest teachers. Because you sit there and you tell them, and you see your children just completely go sideways and fall apart when they don't get proper nutrition, when they don't get the nap in, when they don't get a good night's sleep. And you quickly realize, you're like, why am I preaching to them what I'm not living, right? They don't do what I tell them. They do what I do. And so I knew I was modeling just a really toxic life for them, where I'm not sleeping. Mommy's out covering the Oscars till 11 p.m., comes home, sleeps for 2 hours, goes on a morning show, talks about her big Oscar night, and is just completely depleted for my family, right? Like, I was never giving them the best of me. I was giving them what was the rest of me, right? And so having children really sort of like put that perspective where I was like, I am not modeling what I want them to choose for their life. You know, are they healthy? Are they prioritizing rest? Are they working at a place where they feel valued? And so those things were all sort of like in my orbit. And then I started having panic attacks. There was this talk of, COVID, very early talks of COVID. And I knew as a brain tumor survivor how much of my immune system is sensitive to things out there. And I just started it started coming out as panic attacks. And I went to work one day, and I'm about to go, into the makeup and hair room. And right before, I projectile vomit onto the wall. And I'm like, shit, am I pregnant again? and it was just like, my body was like, this is enough. So after the third panic attack at work, I sit down with Leif, and Leif's like, he always comes off as such a hero in these stories, man. Am I just is he a real
solid.
hero?
He seems rock solid right now from where I sit. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
I know.
He's a keeper.
I'm like, wait, am I just a really good storyteller and PR rep for him, or is he really just the best human? Could be a both. It could be a both thing. But he sits me down, and he has his computer up with our finances and an Excel sheet, and he said, I know you work so hard to get to where you are, and I don't want to take that away from you. You are so good at what you do, and you deserve all the accomplishments that you've reached so far. But should you want to know, these are our finances. If you choose to leave, we will be okay. We will be okay. And I somehow feel like you need me to give you permission. You are looking for permission to stop. So if you are, he's like, I'm not pushing anything on you. I know you're so able to make your own decisions.
Leif's a stud. What a stud.
Yeah.
What a classy thing to say, hey, this is a reflection.
Yeah, and then
he's got a six-pack too. He's good look. Yeah,
he's easy on the eyes too, which is the least interesting thing about him. But it's a nice bonus. And then so he said, "You have my full permission to stop," and I stopped going in that day. I had 4 months left on my contract, and I just said, "I'm out."
Screw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was so crazy. I'm a grown ass woman, but in the trauma zone, right? In your nervous system, we're all just little kids, right? And so I was still needing that permission to stop doing this to myself. And when I say myself, it's not even a fair statement, because I was doing it to everyone around me, right? I was so short with Leif. I was so grouchy with my kids, and I was just I was just a shell of a person. And it's so funny, how Google Photos always reminds you, on this day 12 years ago you were interviewing, or I a picture of me getting a backstage tour with Barbara Streisand came up. It's this was you 12 years ago, and I was like, no. I had to watch to believe that was me hanging out with Barbara Streisand for hours, because I was sleepwalking the whole time. Wow. So who the F cares? You got to interview XYZ stars, and cover 9 Oscars. Who cares? Because I'm not present for any of it.
Right.
So it's just it's
I didn't know. I had no idea that was such a grueling gig, to be honest.
But you know what?
Because you really reached the of entertainment reporting, or if you were remotely interested in going to all of these parties and stuff, she couldn't get any further into it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Mecca of entertainment is LA, right? There's only a few news stations that have a dedicated entertainment anchor, right?
Yeah.
So that's another reason too, right? That fear-based and then insecurity space is the reason why I stayed I did that job for 12 years.
How was departing that level, like kind of being for how many years you said, but like that intensity? So then you kind of said, all right, I'm out. And now obviously you're doing a lot of different things, but like, what was the decompression like to move away from that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Ben. I think the only regret is I didn't do it sooner.
Fuck yeah.
Because I just for the first time in my adult life, I was sleeping. And to know what that vitality feels like in my body, to give it proper rest, was just kind of like wild. But it took me like 2 years of that 8-hour sleeping and not being in a toxic workplace to sit into it. I was like, yeah.
I mean, it's like, one is, so the title of our show is Painful Lessons.
Yeah.
And it's like the idea of like, hey, we all go through things where we learn lessons through painful experiences that we have to that informs how we navigate forward. But if we can learn from each other, then maybe we all don't have to have all the same mistakes.
Yeah.
And so what I take from this story is like, I'm like taking ownership of what success really is, as opposed to what maybe momentum is dictating as success. Yeah. And I'm curious if you were to say like, all right, Ben, for you or for your daughters or for whomever, like what I take from this chapter and the decision I made and the life I had before and the life I had after, this was like, I mean, what you said about modeling for your kids, I find so true and like so valuable. And I had to have that same kind of come to Jesus of like, wait a second, like what the fuck? So I'm curious, like if you were to put a pin on it, because I know we're going to like want to share this with our audience, like what are those kind of core lessons that you share with folks from this experience?
I think everything that happens in your life, good or bad, is usable.
Gold mine.
And you just have to have that perspective, right? So
hell yeah.
I mean, even the journey of going through brain cancer with Leif by my side, like how fucking usable was that to see how devoted he was to me? I mean, I think we would have gotten married further down the road anyway, but like in that instant, it became so crystal clear to me that he's my person, right?
Yeah.
And like, what a beautiful gift. What a beautiful gift that I didn't have to ever doubt his devotion for me, right? I think so much of healing is your outlook. I think the difference between struggle and resilience is your perspective. So, however you need to stay positive and always sort of choose the brighter side of a situation happening, like you got to do that for yourself. And then
smoking advice. I mean, or thoughts. I mean,
well, let me just tell you. I mean, okay. I have a question for you, Tyler. Yeah. Did I make it as a podcast guest before? Like, am I a guest on Painful Lessons before Armie Hammer? That's all I want to know.
Are you a guest for Armie Hammer?
Yeah.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Like I feel like when you launch a podcast, you want to come out of the gates swinging, right? Yeah. So you're like, okay, who do I have that's gonna like be my A-star guest?
So yes, Armie will be a guest, and and it will be an inspiring stories from a painful lesson.
Yeah.
But in relation to you, I feel like you couldn't come closer to losing it all than having losing your brain, quite frankly.
Oh, gosh.
Or to being told you can't have kids or something like that.
Well, by the way, by the way, I did lose half my vision. Like, nobody walks away from brain cancer, like, unscathed, you know? I do feel like the range of outcomes, I am walking away pretty unscathed. Like, if you lived, you are, like, in the minority, you know? When I was in the ICU for 7 days, it was, like, crazy. Like, most people don't get out.
Right.
Like, that's the final stop, right? So I do have a lot of survival guilt because it's just, the odds are so against you. Like, when they find something in a scan, you're always like, oh my God, please don't let it be the brain. Please don't let it be the brain. And then mine was a brain. So it was just, you know, but anyway, all this to say, I got asked to be on a lot of podcasts because I think there's just a lot of podcasts out there. I normally say no because like I have like lots of things going on. I said yes because A, I love you, Tyler, and now I love you, Ben. But also, I think when you go through something as harrowing as brain cancer and you're able to like be on the other side of it, right? I just hope that like I'm just a firm believer, and Tyler, this is why I love you're so open about your rehab journey and all of that stuff, because I think so oftentimes our survivor story becomes someone else's guide, right? It's like, what is the effing point if you cannot relay this intel to someone so they can hopefully make their journey a little bit smoother, right? So
you have absolutely crushed the entire point. And you also did it just as our
that's
thing
why when you asked me to be on this, and I was like, I don't know, like my in-laws are in town, I'm like 50 things
amazing.
going on, but I saw the title of the podcast and I knew it was an opportunity for me to be a survival guide for someone else. And so hopefully whatever you can take away from
and print. Amazing.
All right, that was great.
Amazing.